Aloha, my name is Olivia Gagan and I will be presenting on Celtic music. So, why Celtic? For being Irish, Scottish, and British, I don't know too much about their traditional forms of music, which is why I decided to research it further and learn more about my ethnic background, at least musically. Although I don't know much about this type of music, I've been listening to, singing, and enjoying folk music of all kinds. Therefore, I decided to learn more about Celtic music specifically within the traditional Irish culture. I had the pleasure of visiting Ireland for about 2 weeks, where I experienced some of the culture and even got to listen to live music in a pub. Although it may not have been traditional, I thoroughly enjoyed listening to the music and watching the dancers perform such a lively and exciting dance. So, what is Celtic music? The word Celtic in the language of music is any music relating to the people and cultures of Ireland, Scotland, Wales, and a couple other places. Current Celtic music is characterized by the use of various instruments, while traditional were not. There are two main styles of Celtic music, one being more instrumental, featuring reels and jigs, and one being more vocal, like a cappella narrative songs. So the next thing we're going to do is look at some samples of each. This is a Celtic jig or reel. And next we'll be looking at a Celtic vocal piece, and you'll kind of be able to tell the difference between these two. So where did Celtic music come from? It is about 2,000 years old, which may seem old, but that's actually pretty recent in our world today. It originated in Ireland, Scotland, and Wales. And the great Celtic music upsurge took place in the 1970s thanks to various influential artists from Ireland, Scotland, Brittany, Galicia, and Wales, many of which we'll be talking about next. Celtic music is basically a broad grouping of musical genres that evolved out of the folk musical traditions of the Celtic people of Western Europe. So this kind of music came from the Celts, the people of Western Europe. The music of Wales, Cornwall, Isle of Man, Brittany, Northumbria, and Galicia are also frequently considered a part of Celtic music. So there are a few key characteristics of Celtic music, and first we'll be talking about modes and scales. And I know many of you might not know these words. I wasn't too familiar with them myself, but just bear with me. First, it's common to hear Mixolydian and Dorian modes, as well as plays and puns on the pentatonic scale. It's typical for the melody to play up and down the chords and scales, an elevator effect if you will, so it's very all over the place, very high range of notes. And while there are a clear beaten time, usually common time 3/4 or 6/8, it's important to listen for swinging eighth notes, ornamental grace notes, and drone bass harmonies. Another characteristic of Celtic music would be the lyrics. So when there are vocal songs of Celtic music, usually narrative songs or ballads, they tend to be written like a poem. And the only difference between the narrative poem and a narrative lyric is that the musical lyrics will contain some of a chorus or refrain. So it really is basically written like a poem and then added notes into it to make it a story or a ballad. And most vocal songs in Celtic music will have a beginning, a middle, and an end. One of the most well-known Celtic narrative lyrics comes from the tune Cockles and Mussels, known to some as the Ballad of Molly Malone. I'm not sure if you guys are interested in that, but maybe take a listen. So where can you learn Celtic music? It's pretty worldwide in today's age, although you probably won't generally learn it just going to school. They tend to do more music theory and stuff unless you do go to a music school. So it was traditionally passed orally, not even written down until recently, about 18,000s. Now it's mostly written in English, as opposed to the traditional Celtic music that was written in Irish Gaelic. For audiences of Celtic music, there's a wide range of audiences. You can be 12 years old to 90 years old and love Celtic music. But as I said, I heard Celtic music in a local pub in Ireland. I'm sure they have it everywhere over there. It can be for small or large audiences, and now it actually has more of an international fame, even on NPR's famous radio show Thistle and Shamrock. So I'm not sure if my generation is too familiar with it, but I'm sure that most of us have heard Celtic songs whether we knew it or not. So I have some key Celtic musicians and composers. We don't have time to talk about all of them today. But most of these composers some of them are educators, some of them were teachers, some of them were just performers or lovers of Celtic music. So we'll start with Ruaidhrí Dal O'Cathane. He was a member of the gentry, and his most famous composition was Give Me Your Hand. It's an enduring staple of Irish classical and folk performance to this day. So the song he wrote, the title is actually in Irish Gaelic, but I'm not really able to butcher it. Second, Philip Cogan. He was born in Coke. He was a choir boy at Cork. Cogan was a choir boy and eventually landed as an organist in a vulnerable Dublin cathedral. While Cogan wrote and conducted operas today, he was best remembered for his piano repertoire. So many of these people are influential because of what they have brought into Celtic music and how they have influenced other people into it. We also have Michel Esposito, who was an educator in Irish music for about 40 years, bringing a lot of universities more exposure to this kind of music and this culture and tradition. So this is a modern band that is actually taking up traditional Celtic music. I'd like to show you a sample. So in that one, you hear the beautiful harp and the sound of the flute. This is definitely a more calm song as opposed to some jigs and reels, but I find the violin in the end of the song very interesting. I don't know if you guys have time to listen to it, but I will include the videos on my PowerPoint. So there were a lot of changes in Celtic music, mostly involving instrumental changes. They really only started out with bronze horns, flutes, and bells, and now today they use bagpipes, harps, flutes, fiddles, whistles, accordions, frame drums, a Greek bouzouki, which there's a picture of that on the left, looks kind of like a banjo or a mandolin, a Spanish guitar, a banjo, and a mandolin. So the Greek bouzouki actually came about in the 1970s when Irish musicians pioneered the use of it. That's also when the guitar came in, and the mandolin and the banjo. So as you can see, they started out with a very limited list of instruments and added on to that as time went on. This also includes Celtic Fusion. So over time, there's been many different bands and many different people that have made Celtic music more available to them, and also incorporating other types of music into Celtic music. So I will show you an example of that next. So while you do hear the traditional Celtic sound, you also hear the sound of the Spanish guitar, telling you that this kind of fusion is a Spanish and Celtic fusion. I think the sound of the guitar really supplements the Celtic music. So, as we've discussed, it is now a worldwide music. It's on a worldwide stage and people can hear it almost anywhere they go. I don't have enough time to show this video. I'll include it in my presentation as well. But there are a lot of festivals around the world. This one actually takes place in Sydney, Australia. But there are festivals all of Western, Eastern Europe, and the US and Canada. Basically, everywhere you go, you can find a piece of Celtic music. I've actually been to a folk music festival on the island of Kauai, where I live, where I heard a lot of Celtic music. So I was surprised that even our small island has a lot of exposure to this type of music. And this is a sample just by me. I like to play Celtic music sometimes. My dad is also very fond of it. So have a listen. So, and that will
when school isn't a place you have to be,
conclude my presentation. And here's my works cited page. Thank you so much for listening.